All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Karen, and I wanted to pop in today and just share something that I have created for my SLP Learning Academy members so that they can create a bunch of digital resources and be ready to go when it comes to teletherapy. So a lot of us right now are having to make the transition from regular therapy, just in-person therapy, to teletherapy. And there's always a need for having a lot of good materials at your disposal. But the thing is that a lot of us are having to make this transition, and we have some students who maybe our therapy schedule isn't what it used to be before. And we've got to think about providing services a little bit differently. And the thing is that if you're having to make that transition, and if you need to change the way that you're doing therapy, whether it be you can't have everybody passing around the same materials and touching the same thing over and over again, or whether it be that you need more things to be digital, you don't have to necessarily start from scratch. My philosophy is that it's always best to keep it simple. When I was doing mostly in-person therapy, I would do a lot of my sessions, even though I had worksheets and flashcards and games and things like that I would use. I knew how to deliver an effective therapy session with really simple materials. And a lot of times I ended up spending the most time using those things, like simple dry erase board, pencil and paper, things like that. So you can actually apply that same concept to your digital materials. And actually, some of the things that I'm going to share today, you don't just have to, these things don't just work for digital therapy. They'll also work even if you're doing in-person therapy. So there's a couple simple hacks that you can do if you're using tools that are already available to you with Google Suite. I'm sure if you've done teletherapy before, you may have played around with Google Slides and things like that. So I wanted to just share a couple shifts that you can make if you need to transition over to digital therapy. So let me just share my screen here. Let me see if I can get up the right screen and share the tools that I have created for some of my members. Let me pop this up here. Hold on, I've got a couple windows open here. Whoops. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is the members portal for SLP Learning Academy. And I wanted to just share some different things because I think it'll help you to make some shifts as far as where to start when it comes to creating a digital materials library. Because the thing is that yes, apps and games and things with a lot of features are great, but you actually don't need them. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't use them if you have access to different tools online, but you can actually keep this super simple if you don't want to be all techie and if you don't want to have to rely on those things. So I'm going to go into the digital slides library and I'm going to show you how I've got it laid out. And what you can do is use these same concepts to start your materials library and then just use this concept over and over again. So what I recommend doing is that you're going to start with just some basic Google Slides. And then you've got your primary main template for whatever your materials are. And the thing is that when we typically, in the past, like if I was going to use my Arctic flashcards or whatever, I would have that set of flashcards and then I'd always have to be sorting through them for all of my different cases. I'd always have to be like rearranging them for different clients, or maybe on the fly, you're in the middle of a session. You're like, oh, these sets of words don't work well for this client. They need this context with these surrounding vowels. And maybe this set of words works well for this client, but this works well for this client. And then sometimes you want to send things home with them and things like that. And so you have to end up creating a whole bunch of different things. But when you are doing things digitally, whether you're doing them in person, you can actually just really quickly modify the actual slides, rather, which you can't do with some flashcards. And then you can also save a copy, and then you have multiple copies. So you could have an individualized copy for each client. So that way you could have your main slides that you use, that's kind of your skeleton, and then you can customize that and easily save it so that all you need to do for your next session is just click on that file. So let me show you what I mean. And I'm going to go into, for example, let me go into my speech sound disorder. So how I've got this organized here is I've got some different protocols for literacy and language here. I've got some fluency protocols here, social pragmatic protocols. And again, with all of these things, there's a main template. That's what's here, what I've started for my members. But then what they can do, and I've got a video tutorial over each one, so it shows you how to use the protocols and things like that. But what I've done is I've given the template, and then you can take that and customize it for each individual client so that you have these ready-made materials where you can just start where you left off. I found that when I want to be organized with my therapy materials, that I found it a lot easier to have different files on my computer rather than all of this physical stuff that I need to be carrying around. The great part about this is that if you're doing this digitally, you can do this in person as well. You can use these files in person. So let me just show you how let me go into my R card. So how I have it here is that all of these things link to a set of Google Slides that I have pre-made. So I've gone through and I've organized all these different words that you can use as probes. Let me go into the challenge words, because this can show you how you can customize this for your individual clients. So the challenge R word list is something that I've compiled that are words that commonly are difficult based on the context, that are commonly difficult for kids who are working on R. So let me click on that. When you go into this, it brings up the Google Slides. So I've started this for my members. But the thing is, and if you've worked with a client who has difficulty with the R sound, what words they struggle with is so variable based on your individual client. So what you can do is that with any of these decks, I've got the words here. I've got all the target words here, is that you can easily, because this is digital, you can simply just hit enter and you can add another word here. And you can edit it. So it's like, hey, we were working on this word over here. It's like, oh, let's add this to our word list here. And you can add to this as you go. And let's say that there's a word on this list where you're like, we're going to skip this session. You could simply delete the slide. And the great part about this is that what you can do, since it's Google Slides, normally when you've got your articulation cards that you're working on, you've got to make copies, you've got to do things like that if you want to send things home. But what you could do if you're using Google Slides is that you could simply be working on a document and then save a copy and then send it home, send that link home with your clients, obviously making sure that you have the sharing settings set up so that they can actually view the document. You've got to go in here and make sure anyone on the internet can view. So you've got to make sure that this is set to not be restricted so that, let's see. So if you put it on restricted, people have to you actually have to share it with them via their email address. But what you can do is go anyone on the link with the link can view, and you can simply share that document with them. But what I recommend doing is going up here to your document, click make a copy, and then make a copy of that presentation. And you can share that with individual clients. So in theory, what you could have is that you could have multiple decks of challenge words for all your individual clients. And then you can make your lesson plan customizable based on however you want to do it. There's all kinds of cool things that you can do on Google Slides here. You can insert an image. You can upload an image from your computer. You can go in here and search the web for different images. You could type sentences. So you could come up with a whole bunch of different sentences that your clients can say. And then again, if you want to create this as a homework assignment for your clients, you could simply make a Google Slides deck with just the words that you want and then send it home with them. The great thing about this is because this is digital, you might have your master deck of digital cards that you use with your clients. And let's say that you want to use, let me go back out to my main page here. Let's say that I want to go in here and I have a group of students that I want to use my pre-vocalic. Let's do pre-vocalic. So let me go into this deck. Let's say that you want to scroll through this, you want to do some drills with your clients, and you're just using this main deck with them, and you're just scrolling through, they're practicing saying the words. But let's say that you are in this deck here, and you're like, hey, we forgot about this other word, and we want to add it to the deck. You can simply just edit these materials when you're in the middle of your sessions. Or let's say that you want to, over time, add some different images and pictures to your main slide deck. You can do that as you go in your sessions and then save this presentation. So in theory, you don't necessarily have to do all this work outside of therapy. What I found is a lot of times I come up with really good ideas in the middle of my sessions. So because these are digital, what you can do is just simply be adding to these decks as you go along and customizing them so that you're not always starting from scratch. And because it's a digital document, you can simply save it and have different versions of it for different clients. So that can save a lot of time. So my recommendation, if you are struggling to come up with digital materials and you're feeling overwhelmed, is just keep it simple. Start with a basic Google slide deck, add some probes to it, and make it as you go. You can maybe even just designate like an hour a week to add to your slide decks, and then just be kind of creating it, co-creating it with your students as you go. And then over time, what you're going to find is that you're going to gradually build up your library of digital materials. Now, with that all being said, I realize that literally starting from scratch with a blank document can be super overwhelming. And sometimes you do want something to be structured for you. Having a starting point can really cut down on that overwhelm. And I've always been of the mindset of it's more important to have the framework for how you're going to do therapy rather than just the stuff that you're going to use. Once you have that framework and you know how to do things effectively, what you're going to want to do is then you're going to start fitting in the materials and activities from there. But with that being said, I know how overwhelmed a lot of SLPs are right now. And so I did want to give them a starting point. And so that's why in my SLP Learning Academy program, which is all about SLPs, we come together and I help them to figure out how to advance in their careers, how to make the most of their current job situation so that they can have a more fulfilling career. However, part of having a fulfilling career is figuring out how to stay organized so that you can actually have time for other things like professional development. And if you're so in the weeds that you're always trying to get materials together, it can be really hard to do that. So I do spend a lot of time in here providing resources to really help with that organization so that you can make space in your life to think about other things besides scrambling to get your materials together. So that's why I've created this brand new section, the Digital Slides Library, where I give my members a starting point to figure out, okay, like, where do I start with creating these digital slides? And so I'm super excited about it. I've got all different sections. We've got language and literacy protocols, fluency, social pragmatic, and speech sound disorders. I have just started working on this week. And I have a whole bunch of different protocols for R, L, and S and Z, because those are the big ones if you are working with clients who have articulation issues. However, I am going to be adding to this per member request. I'm always adding to this library, and I've also got some resources coming soon for some core vocabulary for individuals who use AAC. So that's how, if you are trying to figure out where to get started when it comes to creating digital resources, I highly recommend starting with the basics and using Google Slides and using this process to get started. But if you don't want to start from scratch, you want some pre-made digital resources to get you going, then I'd love to have you join us in SLP Learning Academy. I will share the link in the description and in the comments below so you can get more information about what's included. But for now, thank you so much, everybody, for watching.